Good afternoon. My name is Simi Pantazelos, and I'm one of the student organizers here for the conference, so we thank you all for being with us today. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to ask if, as you come in, if you wouldn't mind making your way towards the center of the aisle. That way it makes it easier for those who come in during the presentation to join in and find a seat as well. So that would be really appreciated. So our next panelist is Giuseppe Vinci, and his presentation is titled Volleyball versus the World, a practical look at a pioneer in sports analytics. So I'll hand it off to Giuseppe.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good luck to the brave that came watch the volleyball presentation today. That's pretty exciting. My name is Giuseppe Vinci, and I'm thankful to MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference to invite me to present on volleyball, and excited today to share with you some of my experience in volleyball and beach volleyball from the last 3 Olympic Games, which I've been part of as a coach, as a consultant coach, or a scout, and so forth. It will be a pretty quick introduction on volleyball analytics, the data we gather, what we look at, and hopefully it will be worthwhile for you, and you'll bring home something to think about, maybe in a different sport, or maybe in volleyball if you're involved in volleyball. Volleyball, honestly, is a sport where scouting and statistics are very important in order to help coaches and athletes predict what's going on, given the fact that it's a very fast-paced sport, so you got to predict a lot in order to be successful. The problem is that we just don't have the crazy technology that our other sports do have, like tracking, player tracking, and so forth. It will be doable. It's just expensive, a little too expensive for where we're at now. But in the presentation, I'll give you a rundown of what the sport is about for those that do not know volleyball very well, the data we gather, and then we'll talk a bit of some standard and advanced analytics and statistics that we use in volleyball. But as we get started, I have a quick question just to see how many people here, by raise of hand, even if it's broken, by raise of hand, how many people feel like they know volleyball in the room? Okay, that's pretty good. How many people know volleyball because they played in the backyard? Okay, not many, perfect. But so I hope just you leave the presentation knowing quite a bit more about volleyball and thinking it of as a sport that is really competitive. So we're actually in the birth state of volleyball. It was born in Massachusetts around the same time that basketball was born. Has been in the Olympics since Tokyo 1964. The first woman team sport to be in the Olympic Games. That's pretty exciting. Beach volleyball side was born in California in the 60s. Olympic sport since Atlanta 1996, where 2 US teams on the men's side played for the gold medal. And believe it or not, live statistics have been on the bench for indoor volleyball as early as in the 80s, with long, whatever, PSI cables, whatever they were called. But there were live stats taken on the bench for coaches to make decisions. Here we go. In the last 15 to 20 years, the rules of the game have changed quite a bit, so I'll just go through those really quick. It was a side-out game, meaning you score just when you serve. Now it's a rally point scoring system, meaning you score on every time the ball goes down, which lowered the number of serves in the match overall. In a set, there were about 100. Now there are about 50, which cut the time in half. Better for TV, better for the fans that go to the game overall. You can argue against that. But also the let serve, basically the ball touching the net when you serve, is allowed, which is allowed for tougher serves, and that's pretty spectacular. You can touch the net if you're a player, which allows just when you're not interfering too much, which still makes it easier to play the game. And there's the player with the different jersey, if you've been to a volleyball game recently, which the first thing I always have to tell people that do not know about volleyball, but there's quite a few of you that know, he hasn't or she hasn't forgotten the jersey. It's just that jersey determines a player that is a defensive specialist. So they make pretty awesome defensive plays, and they cannot be really involved with the offense. Some of the best qualities of volleyball, in my opinion, just fast-paced, a point is assigned every about 18 seconds. High speed, in Rio, believe it or not, the fastest serve by Ivan Zaitsev in a semifinal, 80 miles per hour. It's a 300 grams ball. I don't know what the PSI is, but if it hits you, it hurts you bad. If it hits you in the face, you've got a concussion, probably. I'm pretty sure you get a concussion. Possession change is a dynamic sport. Every second, the ball changes possession from a player to the other. And about verticals, well, we are pretty much on par with NBA athletes. I just researched a couple of them. MJ, 46-inch vertical, one of the most explosive athletes in basketball that I could think of. Leonard Marshall, a Cuban player, played probably 15 years of pro volleyball. He still plays. 45-inch. It's pretty good verticals right there. The other thing worth mentioning here, well, there isn't the part, so I'll just mention it by voice, is the fact that volleyball, I mentioned, is at a computer on the bench since the 80s. So it's very data-oriented. Coaching education is a lot about numbers, studying the game, and the fact that predicting the game is so important because the ball comes at you that fast, it makes a big difference. So it's a very data-oriented sport, and it's pretty fun to be in it if you like numbers like me. Here, this table just shows the size of volleyball. Just real quick to give you an idea. Yes, in the US, it's not the biggest sport. There's not a professional league, but across the world, there's millions of fans. And believe it or not, in the US, it's the #1 girls' junior sport, high school age sport. #1, before basketball and soccer. So something to think about. Now, since we're at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, just to bring 538 into the picture, this is something they posted right before the Olympic Games. I was in Rio, and I saw this posted online. Oh, this is pretty cool. So they basically went and surveyed people and say, okay, you watched this event and this event. Which one did you prefer? Who won the head-to-head? And volleyball came on top, yet naturally lower than other single events like the 100 meters or the freestyle relay and so forth, but it tells you it's a fun sport to watch. Lastly, before we get into the numbers, if I were today to kind of try to convince you why volleyball is like the sport to watch and is, in my opinion, the best team sport, it's because you've got to rely on your teammates by rule. There are constraints that make you have to rely on them. You cannot stop the ball and stall the game or take a moment to think. You just cannot. And in other sports, you don't have much time to think, but sometimes you can take that time to think. Explosive sport, and I mean, we said it, an 80 miles per hour ball coming at you in an area that is about 900 square feet, 81 square meters for fellow Europeans. It's pretty amazing to see. Every point matters, meaning that if you go down by 2, you're in trouble, and you've got to make decisions fast, really fast, in order to make it work, and read the game very well, which is it's pretty hard to accomplish. But let's get down to business. So what I want to do here, my goal is to hopefully spur some ideas by sharing what we do in volleyball at the highest level of analysis. The nice thing from an analysis point of view is that the constraints set by the rules of the game, as I mentioned, the fact that events have to succeed each other in a certain way, make the sport more prone than others to be analyzed with pretty advanced analytical models. Markov chain, Bayesian, linear regression, logistic regression, kernel density, all sort of things. We will watch a volleyball rally from the Rio Olympics, gold medal match, men's volleyball, if you couldn't tell, to give you a practical idea of what data we gather. Know that once we get the video and we tag it and all of that, and we add the data, there's actually either somebody, or in the case of my company, they run a computer doing the grading and say, okay, this is what happened, here's the grade. So there's machine learning going on there. We are gathering this data for all levels of play, thousands of matches, juniors, like 14s, 15s, 16s, colleges, kind of like synergy style for volleyball, and professional teams. So it's pretty good, and I'll tell you right away, the biggest thing we will love to have as a data point is the location of the players and of the ball at all times, which would be possible if we could put in a lot of facilities some hardware. But no, it's okay. I'll start the video, we'll look it over, and then we'll start talking about it. So here's a serve, receive, a set, an attack. There's an easy dig. That guy's about 41 years old. Here it is, another dig. Set to the outside, so the left side of the net, we call it the outside hitter. Again to him and out of bounds, okay? So here's a pretty standard rally. We picked a kind of a pretty good one. Nothing special though. And let's go through all the rallies, all the skills. So we talked about the serve. You see that we're gathering information, who, naturally, the time and location, so timestamp, X, Y, Z, all of that. The speed of the ball. It's not the actual speed of the ball because we don't have actual a radar gun or anything like that in the gym, but it's an accurate speed within our model. We cannot tell you it's miles per hour. We can know that at the Olympic Games where they have all the speeds. Rotation, so meaning in ball we have to keep track who's the server and in what order they serve. So that determines the rotations, the phases, lineups on the court, score and score differential, and then those ones in bold and underlined are the ones specific to the skill. In this case, for serve, we look if it's a standing, a jump floor, or a jump spin serve. And this one is a jump spin serve, very, very common in men's volleyball, just because it's a more physical sport than more physical game than the other genders and levels. Then we got to receive, so this ball coming to you at 80 miles per hour, you've got to pass it and put it in a good spot. We also tell what side of the body you are receiving the ball on and the type of serve that you received. Then we got the set, which is kind of what you could compare to what a quarterback does, okay? This player is the player that decided, who do I set, what plays do I run, all those kind of things. It's kind of the mind of the team, and therefore we have a few extra things that we record, which are the routes that are run by all the players and whose the ball is given to, and the type of set. If it's a one-handed set, always if you have a working hand, and a normal set or a bump set with your forearms. Then there's the attack, okay? Balls in the attack, they come from closer and they go as fast. So that's the speed of those balls coming at you. It's pretty impressive. What we add to this is we add the attack combination that is run, so the exact kind of type of play that is being attacked. If it's front or back row, the front row is kind of the darker area. The back row is the lighter area, and there's a rule that you cannot just go back and forth between those to attack. The number of blockers, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it looks like it's 1 combined between the two of them. And the attack type, so if it's a hard hit, a tip, or a roll shot, which is an off-speed shot. Then comes the block, same kind of information, how many blockers, the type of attack. We also gather data on who assisted. So the touch usually is just by one person. We keep track of who else is helping out here to give them at least some value so that when we look at matchups, we can tell you, oh, these two players together are the most efficient block and not these other two together. Defense, same type of data. We gather the information on the location of the body and the angle of impact, just like on the reception. And that's the data we gather, okay? So here into some basic statistics, okay? And we'll see. These are basic statistics just by phase. You see SO percentage, side out percentage. So when you receive, point score is when you're serving. Notice right away that in volleyball is a disadvantage to actually serve. You score 37% of the times in men's volleyball, which is pretty low. So if at the coin toss, pick receive. Then there's first ball side out. So how often you side out on that very first ball. And first ball point scoring. So how often you score on that first chance to score a real point when you're the serving team to start. Also, we look kind of at the distribution of how you score points, just block stops, kills, serving aces, and miscellaneous points and opponent's errors. So this is pretty straightforward. Then on the next slide, there's hitting efficiency. It pretty much calculates the expected points earned per attack. The formula, as you can see, is just attacks point minus attacks errors minus attacks blocked over total attacks. Pretty simple. If you are to compare it to other sports, it's basketball, it's shots made minus shots missed over total shots. So something very simple, but it's something that many coaches just use as a standard statistics across volleyball. And even if it's a standard, also for the press, it's highly correlated to winning. So you see those dots are all the observations that we have for hitting efficiency, and they follow what we would hope to be in correlation to game-winning percentage. So it's a good stat to have and to quickly look at. Then, going along, there are naturally hitting charts, we call them, very basic. Just to give you an idea, we'll look at them both as lines or as heat maps. The lines allow us to see if the ball is a little inside or wide or tight or off. Does the attacker change their tendencies? And you look at this because you want to have an idea of what your opponents are going to do and what to expect. And this is kind of what coaches do on the bench oftentimes if you see them charting. We do that for serves, and you see on the serves we put also kind of our internal model speed. Then passing percentage. This gets pretty interesting. So here, passing is the fundamental that follows the serve and of which the goal is to put the ball in the best possible location for the setter to be able to run the offense however she or he wants. It basically tells us how often the ball is passed or received to a good location. And to come up with that good location, we are using a kernel density estimation based on the highest kill percentage on the next attack. So here, the red area is like, if you put the ball there, the kill percentage is pretty high. And then once we know that, we come up with a simple bar chart that tells us, hey, this is how good our players are, this is our team, where they are at, this is our level of play, where we're at, and in this case, USA men's volleyball, from this past Olympics, I think, is everybody's pretty good. It's a very good passing team, which makes a big difference. Now, moving on, we can talk a bit about tactics. So as we discussed, given the pace of the game, predicting what is going to happen is key to a team's defense. So because of this, match analysis over the years in volleyball has evolved greatly, and it is a big part of the game and the coaching education. In this case, we're going to simply look at offensive distribution, which is an analysis of team setter. And these charts, what they tell us is simple. The top three, they tell us, okay, where is the ball being set to? Okay, where is it going? Color-coded, I can see the efficiency. Oh, I can see the efficiencies, I can see the kill percentage and so forth, and I can make kind of my assumptions. You see on the second one, on good pass, the middle square, which is the quick ball, which is the toughest one to serve, as you start to defend, as the good pass percentage goes up, on good pass you see that number, that percentage goes up to 39% from 27, and if you look at the efficiency, it's 362 versus 348, and they set it more because it's more efficient. On the bottom, that tells us kind of the routes that the setter likes to have their players run, how often they're set. The one on the left, the front quick, is run 32% of the times by this team, and you can see what they do with it, okay? So pretty straightforward to give you an idea. Naturally, you can then go and filter by phase of the game, who's on the court, score differential, okay, above, in what we call the red zone, above 20 points, you win at 25. So above 20, within 2 points, what do they do, what do they like to do, and so forth. Okay. Now let's get a bit into something a little more technical. So the last 2 slides, that's what I hope to do in the last 5 minutes or so to then take some questions. So volleyball has generally used subjective statistics, and over the last few years, what I attempted to do, and the reason why I started a company to make it possible, was generating a rating model to eliminate the grading bias and effectively grade teams and players by avoiding to look at what happens before or after. That was pretty much the goal. And this makes each rating completely independent. So if we look at this, you see we have a rating for each fundamental. So we pick the 6 key fundamentals: serve, pass or receive, attack, block, dig, set. We built a model to evaluate each of those fundamentals completely independent, because every single one has different characteristics. So we built a model for each of them. For passing, I showed you we used that kernel density estimation model, and we looked at that. For attacking, it's completely different. And we came up with these single values. Then we looked at the weights of those fundamentals in the game by position, by phase of the game, and by situation and all of that. And we can now weight every touch based on its outcome, and just off that touch without looking at before or after, and we can come up with an overall rating, which turns out to be pretty accurate. So those are all the observations, and you see right away as the volumetrics rating, what I call it, goes up, the set winning percentage goes up, which tells us, hey, it's a good indicator of am I playing well? Is this player good? Is this player not so good? And then I can break it down fundamental by fundamental. And we got a paper presented here at on the conference that talks through this in detail. You can go read the poster or talk to us here or talk to me. Then the next one that is interesting as well is we have also worked with some statisticians at Volumetrics on an expected points model, somewhat similar to the basketball real plus and minus. It gives a numeric value, it gives a numeric representation of how much benefit a player either adds or subtracts from the team success in the measure of points and also fraction of points. So if you look at this table, this match, okay, Team A and Team B, at the end of the match, they scored a total of 110 versus 102 points, so a differential of 8 points. If you look at the breakdown of the teams on the bottom, you see that there are fraction of points, but the difference at the end of the day is those 8 points that we see just on the normal score of the match. So that was the goal. And that way I can go in and see, okay, who's actually creating value, who's taking value away, and do I have a player on the bench or a player that I could bring on my team that will add half a point extra, a point extra, 1.5 point extra. And if you look at high-level volleyball, the sets are often 25-22, 25-23, 26-24. They're close. So it's a point makes a big difference. One side out makes a big difference. So it's interesting to think about it. But to conclude and maybe take a couple questions in the last 4 minutes we have, thank you to MIT Sloan for letting a volleyball speaker come and talk for the first time. We're grateful for that. And I hope you have a better idea of kind of what we do in the world of volleyball. There's some very advanced stuff, I think, which is worth looking at also from different sports perspective. And if you think that we're doing this really for thousands of junior, collegiate, and professional teams, we've got data that we can use to do pretty amazing things that we already see in other sports, like recruiting and so forth. So thank you, and I'll take any question. We've got a little over 3 minutes. Okay.
You don't have the player tracking data like other sports have. Are you having to get all this data by reviewing tape?
Yeah, so the question is, if you don't have the player tracking data, how do you get the locations? We've got to review all the video. So thousands of matches, people going through it. We have a very efficient way to do it, much more efficient than 2, 5, 10 years ago, but that's what we've got to do. Yeah, back there. What, sorry? Yeah, actually, through the platform that they use, they can log in and see their stats. They cannot download raw data. They cannot download raw data, but we provide it to, if universities want to do it and they commit to put it public, we give the data easily to students or coaches or professors. Yeah.
When reviewing the table and scoring players, did you find one position stood out more than others?
Yeah. So a more important position. Yeah. So given there are 6 fundamentals, there are some positions that just do not execute in all positions. So do not have attempts in all fundamentals, sorry. And the outside hitter, so the player on the left side gets to attack, to serve, to defend, to receive. So that position is really, really important. Now we're able to grade setting, like it's tough because it's fairly intangible without the data we had until now. So setting is, the setter actually importance has gone up quite a bit, and there might be an argument that is the most important position, even from a numbers points of view. So that's interesting to see. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like the question is, can you use this data to help athletes make the right decision on where to attack? That's a big part of scouting. When a team prepares for an opponent, you look at, hey, this is likely how they're gonna block you, and you'll need to be ready with this shot or this shot. We know you've got it because we have seen it. You just have to execute it in game. And during the game, with the live stats that we have available in volleyball, collegiate level, all of that, you actually can make those decisions live during the match. If you go to any volleyball D1 match, top 50 teams, I will say, you'll see coaches on the bench with a computer looking at the data during every timeout, during and in between sets, all the times. Oh.
Did you find that your expected points model that you created put either the defensive specialist or the libero at a disadvantage since they never scored? Does it take into consideration that their pure job is defense and maybe a 0 is good for a DS and negative points is measuring their force?
Yeah, the question is, hey, with your overall rating, the players that don't execute, don't have attempts in all the fundamentals, do they get kind of pushed down? That happens on the overall, but as you look by position, you're very quick to realize, hey, this is a good player. And if you see a libero or a middle blocker pop up at the top of a overall list, you know these guys are really, really good players. But we know the goals for each position, so if I know, hey, you should be at least a 5.0 as a libero, that's a good goal, you know that. As an outside, you probably want to be a couple points higher in our rating. Okay.
Are there enough heated matchups between certain hitters and blockers over the course of a match or a tournament or a season to make that type of data interesting, or is individual versus team usually?
No, it's team versus team, absolutely, yeah, all the times, yeah. And I know that the time ran out, so thanks for the questions and thanks for showing up, and I'm glad I had the chance to present.